The Mischief Manifesto, written by Wario Wario. Book 3, A Few of My Favorite Crimes. I truly wish that in all of my criminal endeavors there was a single person capable of preventing them, or inflicting some manner of punishment on me for their commission. But the world, I regret to report, contains no individual clever enough to prosecute me. Frankly, I do not understand how someone dedicated to enforcing the law cannot even get me to obey a single one thus far. I heavily criticize and condemn anyone who fits this profile. It is conceivable that terror, perhaps combined with seething jealousy, is what ultimately forces my adversaries to fall inexcusably short of themselves. Anyway, for sake of their humiliation and my love for gloating, here are some brief accounts of my life's felonious accolades, prefaced with my firm endorsement for imitating them. I suppose you could say the first long con I ever pulled that saw to the theft of deeply valuable assets was telling my mother that I was spending my daily lunch money on lunch at school, when really I was placing it in a high-yield savings account that accrued snowballing interest as I built a fraudulent child abuse case on the pretense that she was neglecting to feed me. I suppose that easily I could have built a case on the countless actual instances of her abuse from our home video collection alone, but I never did shy away from a challenge. From this I gained my first multi-millions, but the real gain was the pride I derived from having squandered the long-standing investment of time, effort, and trust put into me by my dearest loved ones. Not long after, I was told by a financial auditor that I already made enough money to be set for several lifetimes. This was the exact moment I realized that I would never have enough money, for I did not appreciate his tone. Entirely by coincidence, I committed my first bank robbery the same day said auditor was found dead. At the time, I happened to be the prime suspect for his murder, but I timed the heist perfectly as a solid alibi. The bank happened to be the same one I deposited my millions in lunch money to, marking the first of many times I appropriated money from myself. A pointless but overall exhilarating endeavor I continue to enjoy. After being acquitted of the murder, I was immediately put back on trial for the heist, but quickly defeated the case by switching my alibi and proving I was busy killing the auditor during this crime, leveraging the double jeopardy clause. My blatant finessing of the justice system went on to incite much outcry from the political community and the general public, leading to a trend of random passers-by pelting me with rotten garlic, which of course, as you know, turned out to be the origin of my love and passion for my favorite herb. I come now to the point in my history when the constant criminality exhibited in my daily proceedings went from small time to larger than life. I decided one morning to watch the daily national news, assuring that even my own brain cells should not be safe from my bullying, when I saw a piece explaining that Mario was currently conquesting Sarasaland as a single-handed foreign military proxy in the interest of Princess Daisy and her genocidal cabinet. After having a good laugh at the thought of millions being displaced, I realized that much like Caesar in the garlic wars of the old Mushroom Empire, Mario was away from his homeland, leaving it without any defense beyond himself to speak of due to his horrendous vanity issues. Briefly, I was disgusted by such brazen self-interest, but this quickly faded upon conceiving that perhaps I could benefit from this. Quickly, I proceeded to consume near deadly amounts of alcohol, a tried and true method for conceiving my most successful schemes. I awakened from the blackout around 16 days later, elated to find that I had implemented some profound black sorcery to convince every last citizen of Mario Land that I was in fact their beloved sovereign, and that Mario, upon his return, was a deranged and despised public menace who was to be killed on sight. For the next few weeks, I reveled in watching Mario be forced to slaughter his own supporters and loved ones while I sat in leisure, testing the patience of national officials and vandalizing the castle in the crudest and most childish of ways. Eventually, Mario came to oust me from this position and regained it for himself. Thankfully, by then, I had whittled the people's trust of their government down to bitter resentment, and the breaking of my spell only stood to gaslight the population such that the separate actions of Mario and I were made indistinguishable. A prolonged civil war ensued, but my lack of involvement past this point was locked in proportion with my total loss of interest. We fast forward nearly a decade later, when through public relations concerns I was invited to Mario's tennis tournament as a political formality. However, there was a clause intending to disqualify me from participating that stated I required a partner to accompany me for the team matches that had been scheduled, fully knowing that I detest and look heavily down upon any sort of teamwork. I snidely laughed and then loudly farted to express my grief at this, for the idea that I would not be able to ruin Mario's gathering was a devastating thought. Racking my extensive legal knowledge for a loophole, I conceived of about a dozen possible solutions, but none were cheeky or outrageous enough to earn my conviction despite being perfectly effective on their own. I needed to do something on brand. To be heinously criminal without some sort of wildly absurd and attention-seeking twist was simply not to be Wario. As I ruminated, I wandered the streets of the worst possible neighborhoods alone, hoping to perhaps provoke a criminal into victimizing me for some inspiration. It was in the back alley of a condemned hospital/mental asylum that I was confronted by a tall, filthy man that emerged from large piles of medical waste, wielding a long, used piece of dental floss that he threatened to strangle me with if I did not comply with his sexual demands. With a simple look into his eyes and a glance downward at his naked groin, I could tell he harbored vigorous intent, despite me now holding him at gunpoint from about 20 feet away, and his acknowledgement of me by name as a notorious violator of self-defense and fleeing felon laws. His ignorant confidence impressed me only slightly less than his wiry mustache that happened to be similar to my own. It is for these two reasons that I proceeded to welcome this man into my life as a trusted confidant and accomplice. As you might already have guessed, this man's name was Waluigi, after of course legally changing it to that as a copyright of WarioWare Inc. and signing all personal decision-making over to me for a paper-thin usurious loan of 56 cents at an interest rate of 2 trillion% every 12 seconds. Needless to say, the look on Mario's face when we arrived at his tennis tournament was well worth it. It is now, dear consumers, that I must move on to the next section of my book, for this is already far more than my legal counsel has begged me not to disclose. But I promise you, true to the ways of Wario, to return to more documentation of my favorite crimes as soon as I can replace my staff with better yes-men, and leave my detractors with the open challenge to attempt litigation against me given these writings. Your wasted efforts are one of the only things besides breaking the law that give me joy.